Semen retention can be a cause of confusion and even controversy. Around No Nut November, there's generally a ton of articles released into mainstream publications saying why you shouldn't do it, why there's no benefit. And yet we have other publications, spiritual publications, material from the Ayurvedic or the Taoist traditions, for example. You got guys like me saying there's so much benefit to it. It can become confusing, especially if you're reading conflicting articles. I don't think it's a bad thing to read conflicting articles. I've read most of the studies and the articles that are out there, both that are in favor of semen retention and NoFap and those that are against it, because I want to have a well-rounded view and I want to be educated on the topic. What I want to do today is share with you, first of all, these questions are coming in from one of our subscribers, Leo Sigma. So thank you so much for dropping a few different questions. He specifically has 4 questions that inspired this video. So I want to go through those questions and address some of the controversies around the practice of semen retention. Let's dive into it. Hi, my name is Nakula and I help men master their S3X energy so you can become a powerhouse both in and outside the bedroom and ultimately unleash all your God-given abilities. Go to the link in the description below and take the free transmutation guide if you want to learn more about the practice and experience what it's like to transmute your energy. So there's 4 questions by Leo Sigma. I'm going to read the questions and then I'm going to go back and readdress them one by one. So Leo says, I'm curious about the science. You said when semen is reabsorbed into the body, it has various impacts. While science says the nutrients and minerals are very little compared to a diet and that reabsorption offers minimal benefits. Secondly, how do sperm cells fill one with creative intelligence physically and spiritually when science says they are microscopic and have little effects when reabsorbed? Third, can frequent ejaculation still affect a man when he replenishes with a rich diet or food rich in various nutrients? And lastly, where does sexual energy come from when a man retains? Is it from the prostate or the seminal vessels or sperm cells? Because semen is separated into constitutes components, well, when it's in the man's body. All great questions. So the first thing I want to address is the first 2 questions you refer to the science says. I want you to, first of all, understand that there is no absolute science. So when we use words like the science says, this became really popular in the COVID era when politicians were like, I follow the science, I follow the science. And you should know that that term, I follow the science, actually came out of a marketing focus group. So the word science doesn't mean absolute. When you say the science says, it's not that you're actually following science, you're reading certain articles that is using the word science. Science is an experiment. And actually the scientific basis is, unless it is proven wrong, it can be considered as true. So the world, how scientists work is that they put out a theory in which they believe to be true, and it's based for others to disprove it. I want you to know, unless you're actually doing your own experiments, you're not following science, you're following experts or those that you consider authorities, which you give authority to. Meaning, one guy can be following me and what I'm saying, another guy can be following somebody else and what they're saying. That's up to you. So when we use this term science, let's not think that it's infallible or that just because certain articles have said, well, the science says this, we should actually question what is, first of all, the basis of that science, how many experiments were done, who was funding that experiment. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, many mainstream publications around No Nut November put out articles saying why you shouldn't participate in No Nut November and why there's no benefits in NoFap. If you look at those mainstream publications, you'll see that they're owned by many of the popular magazines and mainstream media, which is owned in the background by the same trust funds or groups that own media, that own much of Big Pharma. And Big Pharma does have an agenda to have you ejaculating more. Right now, just in case you don't know, big pharmaceutical companies are prescribing, through doctors, are prescribing more testosterone boosters now than ever before. men's supplements have become more in demand now than ever before. And they're the same companies that are also funding these so-called scientific papers. So be careful when you just hear the word science. I'm not a scientist. I have studied both sides of the argument, and most importantly, I've practiced myself. And ultimately, that's what I encourage all of my students and everyone connected me to do. Don't just take my word for it. Practice. Do your own experiments. Ejaculate daily for the next 2 weeks, then go 2 weeks and don't ejaculate, and notice the difference that you feel within yourself. Become your own scientist and know the truth for yourself. All right, I'll get off my soapbox around the word science because it can be very misleading. Don't think that the word science is infallible. Remember, there are biases. I'm going to share my biases. My perspective is largely influenced by the spiritual sciences, the Vedic knowledge, the Taoist tradition, things that I've read about chastity within the Bible. My background is in spirituality, and semen retention is a practice that spiritual practitioners have been using for thousands of years for better health, for vitality, and to increase and expand consciousness. My bias also is that I support men who are on the spiritual path and who want to transmute their energy, like it was stated in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, how powerful it is to magnetize your thoughts, your energy field, so you can attract the things you want. My biases are that I follow the principles of the universe as described in books like the Kabbalion or from the Emerald Tablets. That is my perspective. Modern science also backs up semen retention with books like Why Sex is Killing You by Dr. Flatto. I believe that's the name of the book. You can look at my video on Dr. Flatto's work. Dr. Flatto is not a spiritualist. He is a doctor, a scientist, and he backs up the importance of semen retention based upon his scientific studies. So again, remember that there are always multiple perspectives, and you've got to use your intelligence and wisdom and experience to figure out what's right for you. All right, let's get into the question specifically. Science says the nutrients and minerals are very little compared to a diet that reabsorption offers minimal benefits. All right, so let's take a look at what is in semen from a compound perspective. Vitamins and minerals are largely contained of zinc, magnesium, calcium, and potassium. Phosphorus is also found in the semen. Proteins, many different proteins are contained within the semen. Enzymes, hormones like testosterone and and also with the retention of semen stimulates the testicles, which produces more testosterone. There are 3 main types of testosterone. For muscle building, you want what's called free testosterone, but basically we can know that semen contains and also stimulates testosterone growth, as well as many different organic compounds such as amino acids, lipids, and carbohydrates. I bring attention specifically to the phosphate because that is also found in the spinal fluid and the finer brain tissues, which I'll talk a little bit later on in your second question. So what is semen? Semen is concentrated blood. According to Ayurveda, it takes about 40 to 60 ounces of blood to create 1 ounce or 1 drop of semen. That is a tremendous amounts of energy and resources that the body uses to create your semen. Think about it very practically from a biological perspective. The success of a man is, from a biological perspective, is to ejaculate and therefore create babies. The purpose of ejaculation is ultimately to procreate. The body stores or refines the blood through 7 dutas or layers of refinement into semen, which is dripped out of the bone marrow and then absorbed into the bloodstream, put into, and then it is ejaculated out through an ejaculation. The purpose of it is to create a baby. When the semen is retained within the body, that semen is then reabsorbed, and that protein, enzymes, the phosphate, the zinc, the minerals, all of that is redistributed through the body, through the bloodstream, to go to repair the cells, and then to replenish the spinal fluid, and then ultimately to the brain to enhance brain capacity, healing and developing our finer brain tissues, which allows for better memory, focus, and creativity to expand. So to say that it has little benefits because it has a little bit of nutrients, it's not about the amount, it's about the quality. A guy who works out 3 times a week, quality workouts, is better than a guy who goes every day but is half-assing it at the gym. Semen is quality over quantity. And again, do the experiment yourself. Retain for the next 30 days and notice the quality of energy. Notice what it does to your body. Notice what it does to your mind. Notice the power and presence that you possess when you're retaining as opposed to when you're not. And you will then conclude for yourself through your own experimentation of what is true. The second question is, how does sperm cells fill one with creative intelligence physically and spiritually when science says they are microscopic? So most scientists or scientific articles that are published are only looking at the material benefits or the biological makeup. But even modern science has caught up to the spiritualists to say, actually, what we call matter is actually just a condensed form of light. Here's something else scientists have learned, that when the sperm cell enters the egg, there is a light that emanates. That light is energy being emanated. That is the creative intelligence or the vibration or energy or soul that is the spark of the divine that is being actually emanated and creating life. How does matter, how does one cell, one egg mixed with the sperm multiply itself trillions of times and in an organized fashion to become a human form of life, a body? Through a release of this power of energy. The law of correspondence says, as above, so below. What is true for creation at the microscopic level is true for creation as a whole. Scientists subscribe to the Big Bang. So do I. The Big Bang is a light emanating. God spoke the world into existence, emanating energy, massive amounts of force. That is filled with consciousness, creative intelligence. Because consciousness lives outside the dimensions of time and space, science can't measure it, but modern scientists many of them have come to the conclusion of consciousness because they recognize there is an element or force that is creating everything, but we can't measure it with the modern scientific tools. So where does that creative energy come from? The sperm cells are holding that creative life force and energy. When it is contained within the body, the sperm cells are broken down. As it's broken down, that energy is dissipated and therefore transmuted or transferred to the rest of the body, giving us creative intelligence, repairing the body with the original substance or ether of life. Again, don't think in terms of small or big, right? Oh, the sperm cell is just a little thing. It creates life, and within it contains tremendous amounts of power. The third question, can frequent ejaculation still affect a man when he replenishes with a rich diet or food rich in various nutrients? Yes. Because again, these questions, there's a bias to your questions, which we all have biases, but I want you to recognize it, is that you're simply looking at it from a material perspective. Ejaculation is an energetic release. So even though I may be replenishing myself with good nutritions, I'm still releasing that energy, and then it takes a tremendous amounts of energy for the body to refine that food to replenish the semen. Orgasm is not just a physical release. It taxes the whole nervous system and it drains the organs of its vital energy and nutrients to be able to release that nutrients into the woman for the purpose of procreation. Now, is it true that if a man is eating a healthy diet, that he will feel less effects than a man who is unhealthy? Yes, of course that is true. However, even the semen itself is different. The compound is different in each man based upon their diet. Remember, you are what you eat. Your semen is directly reflected on the quality of foods. So a man who's eating good quality foods, a raw food diet, fruits, vegetables, natural whole foods, he's going to have better quality semen and a better quality of life overall than a man who's eating a lot of fast food and, pop and drinks alcohol and smokes weed, because he's putting toxins into his body. So yes, it is true that you can replenish with supplements as well as a good diet, but you will still feel the depletion of energy, and the energy must go to first replenishing the biological or the reproductive system first, meaning your body prioritizes where it puts its nutrients. So the first thing it does is it will prioritize the semen itself for reproductive purposes. Once you've retained for, long periods of time, 10 days, 14 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days and beyond, then the body can free up that energy and it'll reprioritize the spinal fluid, and then it'll reprioritize the brain. So Dr. Flatto says that there's a battle between your balls and your brain. The more you're ejaculating, the more your energy has to go to the base and survival. The more you're retaining, you're freeing up that energy, you're freeing up that nutrients for higher aspects of life, hence creative expression, motivation, drive, and eventually higher vibrations like magnetism and attraction factor. The last question, where does sexual energy come from? Well, sexual energy is actually universal life force. You can say that sexual energy is God consciousness or consciousness contained in its lusty form or in its physical form. So sexual energy doesn't come from anywhere. It's either expressed through its lower form, which is a physical expression, or its highest form, which is ultimate love. Lust and love are the exact same thing, but just different in degree. Just like hot and cold are the same thing, but different in degree. Right or wrong are the same thing, but different in degree. Lust and love, or material energy and spiritual energy, are actually the same thing in different degree. So what is contained in the sperm and in every living cell is sexual energy. Sexual energy is the creative power, the intelligence and force in which expresses consciousness. So it's a bit of an esoteric answer, because you cannot say it comes from here. That's why you're asking, well, where does it come from? It's kind of like saying, where's God? He's there, he's everywhere. Where is sexual energy? Everywhere. Because sexual energy and God or consciousness are one and the same. So once you understand that or grasp that actually sexual energy is the creative life force of everything, but it is contained and concentrated in the sperm, then you recognize the importance of retention. You can feel sexual energy when you retain or when you're aroused and you feel that heat, that tingling sensation. No different if I was to rub my hands together and create heat. We even call it sexual tension or friction, right? We can feel it. We can't point to it and say, there it is, but we can feel it. And that is felt between the magnetic poles, your balls being one pole of your body and your brain being another, or the poles of masculine and feminine. Attraction is the vibration or frequency between the poles that is found everywhere, between a man and a woman who's feeling sexual tension or attraction, or between yourself, between your balls and your brains, your genitals and your brains, and that energy that is going up and down between them, that's what's creating your magnetism and vibration. That's what I teach my students to do. To increase their magnetism, we retain, and then we transmute that energy by shooting that energy up into our bodies, into our brains. Anyways, we're going a little bit away from the question. So thank you so much for the questions. By the way, if you're watching this and you have questions of yourself, please leave them in the comments below or shoot me a message. I'd be happy to do a video for you. I love to answer questions, and I love tough questions like this, because we should ask these questions. We shouldn't be blind followers. Let's look at the modern science. Let's look at what the mainstream is saying. But let's also look at what Ayurveda has said for thousands of years, what the monks and the yogis and the wise men of the Taoist traditions have said, what Paul the Apostle points to in his letters in the book of Galatians, what so many of the wisdom traditions of around the world have said, and let's compare it to what Big Pharma is telling us, and then draw your own conclusion. Ultimately, you're a free man, you're a man, Use your intelligence, do your own experiments, and come to your own conclusions. Appreciate the questions. Make sure you subscribe. Never miss a video. I'll see you on the next one. Much love.